Welcome to another episode of the Eric Crocker Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL Deebo back. And on today's episode, man, we're talking all things wide receivers or really just pass catchers with the 49ers. We're also going to dive in a little bit to the Pittsburgh Steelers and 49ers game. I'm excited for it. I'm going to be there in the building. This is not a live recording, but it is, premiering. This is premiering. And I couldn't do this by myself. Not talking about receivers. I had to bring two special guests on. All right. So we're going to get to those guys. They know a whole lot more about receivers than I do. This is going to be some fun stuff. Appreciate everybody that's tuning into the chat right now. And hey, listen, even though this is premiering, I will be in the chat. All right. But while you're in the chat, make sure that you
like and subscribe this video.
All right. So, yeah, man, I mean, we are inching closer and closer to the 49ers kickoff. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be in the building. I'm also going to be playing Underdog Fantasy. So make sure right now you go to underdogfantasy.com, use the promo code Crocky. They will double your deposit up to $100. They got the season-long plays in right now. So you're running out of time. By the time you guys listen to this or be watching it, it's going to be Wednesday. So we're talking about one more day because once kickoff happens, those season-long plays will be gone. All right. So if you want in on that and you think that Deebo Samuel is going to have more than 4 touchdowns on the season, make sure you put that in there. If you think that Brock Purdy, who his props just popped up, they got Brock Purdy's his yards at it's like 3,600. So if you think he's going to throw for more than 3,600 yards, you need to put that in there. All right. So you can do all that on Underdog Fantasy. Download the app or go to underdogfantasy.com right now and use promo code Crocky. Let's go. All right, enough of that, man. We finna really get into it. Two of my dogs, two guys that are like, when you talk about just knowing the position and knowing what they're seeing and really being objective with some of the things they're seeing, I'm going to be asking the hard-hitting questions. Who's going to be the leading receiver for the 49ers? George Pickens, get the thoughts on him. But I couldn't do this alone. I had to bring on two of my guys. All right, so first up, all right, and I want to make sure that I got my applause ready for him. But we got Josh Harper, the Fresno State great Josh Harper, one of the all-time leading receivers in yards and receptions for the squad. And I had to bring back my guy, Jasper Rose. Jasper Rose, former receiver himself. We played together out in Portland, and he's holding it down as well. San Jose guy, right, Jasper?
Yep. San Jose 408 representing.
All right. And of course, Josh, I mean, I talk about Josh because Josh is who I know. But, man, it was really dope being at the Raider game and seeing your dad on the field and seeing him getting introduced with all the greats. So your dad, you actually won a Super Bowl with the Niners, huh?
Yeah, 81. He won the Super Bowl in 81 and had all them Ronnie Lotts and all them dudes. So, it was crazy to see them all together.
What does he say about what's going on with the team right now? Because I feel like it's kind of chaos. Is that something he's used to? Because I know he saw kind of that change in the guard with Steve Young, Joe Montana. I mean, he won a Super Bowl with Joe Montana, and he kind of sees a change there. So has he had any thoughts on, like, kind of what's been going on with the Niners, or he's like, whatever, just win?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really pay attention like that to the Niners. I mean, of course, that's his team, but just like from the outside looking in, he's like, what's going on over there is it doesn't really seem right. It's like, but he always tells me like, hey, that's how it is. That's how NFL sports is. They tried to do it to him. Niners tried to get rid of my dad. So Bill Walsh didn't let him, and he ended up doing 11 years there. So he's used to it, but he definitely thinks it's a kind of shaky offseason to the Niners for real.
I haven't talked to you, Jasper, about what's going on. Last time I saw you, we were in 49ers Stadium watching the 49ers against the Washington Commanders. We sat next to each other. Shout out to the guy. We had a listener of the pod that was just like, yeah, Crock got tickets, man, come down here. I'm like, Jasper, man, come down here too. So we had great seats and got to watch the game together. But what are some of your thoughts on just really what's going on with the 49ers? Do you think, because, look, we went from the Trey Lance situation. This is Brock Purdy's team now, but then you got Nick Bosa, and he's holding out. They haven't figured that whole thing out. And as we're recording right now, we're talking about almost 7 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday evening. All right, y'all will be watching this or listening to this Wednesday. But as of right now, he is not signed. So are you worried about any of that, or do you have any thoughts on just kind of the chaos that's been going on? Or at least it feels like kind of chaos to me.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes, unfortunately, just with this regime, it's kind of what we've been used to as far as the uncertainty at the quarterback position, the drama that's, ensued since then, and the back and forth, with Trey and the QB battle that was, going on. And, unfortunately, we had to see Trey go, I was one of the people who was, definitely disappointed that Trey didn't get his, where you say you got a fair shot or not shot, whatever the case may be. I'm just overall disappointed he's not still in the building. But with that said, and moving on to now the Bosa situation, I'm also disappointed that the deal isn't done. Disappointed he hasn't been there with the team, but also hopeful and glass half full that he'll be there Sunday, ready to rock in Pittsburgh, man. But yeah, it's been a roller coaster ride as Niner fans have been dealing with for the past decade, and it's kind of what we're used to. So at this point, week one is here, and I'm ready for them to just play and go win it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care who's quarterback. I don't care who's lined up at these, whatever. Just we're all fans of this team, before we're fans of the players. So we just want to see the team that we expect to see, compete and go out there and do what they're capable of doing and just bring it home.
You talked about Nick Bosa, and I think everybody expects him to be ready to roll and be able to just really be full go for the most part come Sunday if he does end up signing late. But do soft tissue injuries worry y'all at all? We can all attest. We've been in camps. We've been in on NFL teams. We've been on pro teams. We've practiced. We played football for a lot of years, and there's a lot of ramping up that goes into it and really preparing. And everybody says, man, like, being in game shape is completely different than anything else. And at the very least in NFL, you can get ready for that even if you're just at practice and competing against guys in practice, that pushing, that pulling. Nick Bosa being able to go up against Trent Williams and knowing I have to go 100% or at least 95% and kind of building up your body in that way. Well, he might not get that. So do you think is that something either one of y'all, and I'll start with you, Josh, are you worried about that at all? I don't know too much about soft tissue injuries. I always tell people I wasn't fast enough to pull a hamstring or anything like that. All right. But do any of those things kind of worry you as it pertains to Nick Bosa? And if he does sign, again, right now he's not signed, but if he does sign and they just throw him out there, do you see an injury potentially happening?
Yes, and I spoke on this before. It really doesn't matter how much in shape you are. Playing in practice and getting those those physical reps against like a Trent Williams, it goes a long way. Like if he tries to go jump out there on a Sunday, say he does end up signing on Saturday or whatnot, and he tries to go out there on Sunday, yes, that they may expose him to some of those soft tissue injuries. He's a powerful guy, so he's I wouldn't say he's twitchy, but is he? I don't know, but he's a powerful guy. Them hamstrings, they're big, right? You don't want him to explode off the out the brakes. You try to get the quarterback and something pops or things like that because he's not used to it and he hasn't ramped up. He hasn't even been to OTAs. So yes, I'm really concerned because those are how those soft tissue injuries happen. I mean, I know you said you're not a fast dude, but I don't think you have to. You don't have to be fast. I mean, I've tried to. I got out there without stretching. I wasn't big on stretching, right? And I torn both my groins off of stuff like that. So I think you do have to ramp up, and it does leave you open to those soft tissue injuries if you don't ramp up. So I hope they take it slow and ease him in.
What are your thoughts on that? As far as, are you worried about anything, Jasper, with the injuries, or do you think like, nah, man, like Nick Bosa, he's a guy, he's gonna be prepared, he's gonna be ready to go. Maybe they'll put him on the snap count, but you're not worried about anything that might happen from a soft tissue perspective that might be lingering throughout the year?
Not necessarily, just because I think his second year, going into his second year, I think he practiced all through training camp and just on a fluke play, blew his ACL. Week 2 against the Jets, so. We lost it for the year that year. So I would assume, just based off his training regimen with his, with his pops and his brothers, like, I'm pretty sure he's doing a lot of those explosive, fast, twitchy things that he might have been doing. You can't really, simulate that game speed, like Josh was alluding to. You can't really simulate those reps that you're going to get against Trent Williams or the guys in camp. But I think they're probably doing a lot of explosive things to simulate what he would be doing in a game and just having his conditioning up. So, I did hear on some of the shows today that, hypothetically he signed today or signs tomorrow, maybe sit him out week 1. Maybe sit him out. I've heard that floating around. Like maybe
Does that scare you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't put too much merit or too much stock in it, just because, again, like I'm somebody who's broken my leg and torn my ACL, like both on really fluky plays. So I know how it happened. It can happen just on a fluke play, or it can just happen just because. It's tricky. I mean, guys are blowing their ACLs out, every week now, and at an astronomical rate. And all these dudes are trained in lifting and like they're doing. There's a lot of sports science and education out there now, and guys are still getting hurt at an alarming rate. So I think just one of those things you just try not to think about and just kind of just go and scared money don't make money. So
yeah,
I just got to go out there and play and hope for the best.
Yeah, well, 49ers need to do something about this money right now, because without Nick Bosa out there, the defense starts to look a little different to me. Like when you have him and then you have everybody else, it's like, oh, I'm very confident with what this defense could be. But if he's not out there, I think that other areas might start to get exposed. Now you have guys on the back end that might have to cover longer. You have jitterbug receivers like Deontay Johnson out there, or you have George Pickens, who, he's just catching jump balls over whoever he's going up against. They got Allen Robinson now. They got Calvin Austin. He's a speedster. They're starting to incorporate him into the offense this year. So those are some things that I kind of worry about, especially if you don't have Nick Bosa. And then the run game. I mean, one thing that was worrisome in the preseason, guys were just running straight at the Niners and picking up yards at a high clip. And that's something that definitely worries me. I know Nick Bosa's out there. He helps in the run and the pass. But no Nick Bosa, it's like, man, can the 49ers get exposed a little bit, or does it make it more difficult? Now guys who I think on the back end, they don't have like the most athletic guys. I think they have guys that do a really good job of like, hey, this is my job. I do this well. But if you have to ask them to do more than that, I'm not sure they are necessarily that guys. And that's what happens when, you use a bunch of draft picks on Trey Lance and you don't have high draft pick corners. You don't have high draft pick safeties. You're not going to get the guys that are, the freaks and great technicians and all that. Usually those guys just go a little bit higher. So Nick Bosa, I'm hoping, he's out there, because if he's not, I think there's some level of exposure that might start to happen. But we didn't come here to talk too much about the 49ers and Nick Bosa in that situation. Again, hopefully by the time people are watching this on Wednesday morning, he is signed. That's the best ideal thing that could happen. But let's talk about the receivers, man. And I think right now, 49ers receivers, a lot of people are saying, man, this is a top 10 tandem. These guys are terrific. And Jasper, I want to start with you with Brandon Aiyuk. All right. He's the guy who in training camp, he's killing it. But I've gone on record saying, I feel like every training camp he's killing it. And they're like, oh, he's here. Brandon Aiyuk, it's his time. And I'm like, man, I didn't see this every offseason. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, he's killing it. I just don't know if the way Kyle calls plays, he's going to just like, all right, I know he's killing it. I know people have trouble guarding him, but nope, I'm going to run my system. I'm going to run my scheme. It almost feels like a high school offensive coordinator, where a lot of times they're so excited to just run their scheme that it's like, hey, man, I got this receiver I could just throw the ball to all game. Like, why don't you just keep feeding them? It's like, nah, I'm going to run this scheme, and this is why we run this play, and we run this play because of that. I feel like that's Kyle. So you got this dog out there that people are struggling to really cover, but he's like, I'm going to run my scheme, and he might get 3 targets. He might get 4 targets. Do you see that changing at all, Jasper? Do you think this is finally the year where they're like, no, we're going to target him what he should get, which is 8+ targets per game?
I do. And Crock, if you go back 2 years to when we started this, we did, we were doing the wideout Wednesdays pre-camp, though. Like, we did this to set up camp, and we kind of we would look at the receivers in the battles. Now we're kind of doing a post-camp, this year, 2 years around. And I remember back then I was saying, I think it was the conversation with what would Aiyuk and Deebo's kind of numbers look like if they were playing in like a Mahomes-ish type of offense. So they were playing just with a guy that can throw you open and kind of anticipate those throws, that allows you to get the yak and kind of allows you to get busy the way they should. I think we're going to see that this year now. Honestly, it was one play from the Chargers game that kind of let me know Brandon Aiyuk, I think, has arrived, and I think he's about to really explode. But it was that hitch that he caught from Purdy. It was the timing, the execution. If you saw the breakdown from JT O'Sullivan, that's pitch and catch. Like that's what we want. You want to have the ball on. You want to hitch like that. Get outside. and then just go score. You know what I mean? So to see him make that play and kind of just already kind of be in game shape and like, the way he attacked, the way, Purdy hit him coming out of his break. I think Brock brings that something to the Niners that, Jimmy did at times, but it wasn't consistent enough for the players to catch the ball in space and just catch it on the move and just be able to just, keep going, not break stride or nothing. And I think that's going to be big with Brock. I think his anticipation and throwing guys open is something that he does that Jimmy just didn't really have in his bag the entire time. So I think that's going to do wonders for Aiyuk and his numbers and the rest of the supporting cast. I really like this. I think this is the deepest receiving core they've had, I think, under the Shanahan-Lynch tenure for sure. And I think Aiyuk's going to flourish this year, really.
Josh, you got a chance to see him, kind of up close and personal, watching the Raiders practices, and you had some things to say about what you were seeing, where you were like, they're struggling to cover him, and Josh kind of dipped out. We'll get Josh back in a second, but Josh was there, and one thing he was talking about with him was he looks ready. He looks ready to go. Like, people can't guard him, they can't defend him. It's extremely difficult. Josh played with Devontae Adams at Fresno State. And that was kind of a name that I want to say James Jones threw out there, where James Jones was like, oh, yeah, man, he reminds me a lot of Devontae Adams. And Josh was like, I'm not willing to go that far with it. But, Josh, what are you seeing now from Brandon Aiyuk in the sense of his game and potentially taking it to the next level? Like, what do you think are some of the differences or some of the things that are just really starting to click for him?
Man, like, I would say him just being a dog. Like, you can just see that confidence out there. Like, when he steps on the field, you can just feel it, like, from the stands. He's going in there. It's like, okay, this DB across from me, he can't guard me, and that's what the top dudes have. My previous coach was Coach Keith Williams, and that's what he instilled in his receivers that he coached, and that's what you see in a Devontae Adams. And the Tyreek Hills and things like that. Like, when they line up, it's like, okay, I don't care who's on me, I don't care how many people is on me. I'm about to get open. I'm a dog. Like, I'm gonna catch it. Break a few tackles. I'm not letting one man tackle me. But that's what I saw from him. When I was seeing him at practice. And then it sounds like he was doing that all camp. He felt like he was the number one dude all camp. He has what it takes. I think he's the Niners' undisputed number one. Like, he's an actual receiver, right? He's Deebo's probably a better player because he can do more with the ball in his hands. You can put him everywhere, line him up everywhere. He could take a screen 80 yards to the house. But if you're talking about a natural receiver, like a number one, I think Aiyuk could be a number one on a different team. But yeah, and that's what he showed me when I was able to see him up close and personal. So I think, agreeing with what Jasper said, I think he's due for a big year this year.
Now, what is a big year for him? Because I feel like with how many weapons the 49ers have, you got Christian McCaffrey, you got Deebo Samuel, you got Brandon Aiyuk, you got George Kittle, who hopefully he's playing because I know he's a little banged up right now. But you got all these mouths to feed, and I thought 1,000 yards for Brandon Aiyuk last year was like, hey man, that's pretty solid for him. Now we're expecting an even bigger year. Do you think there's a chance that he's potentially a 1,300-yard guy? We have seen that out of Kittle. We have seen that season out of Deebo. Will we now see that type of season out of Brandon Aiyuk? And I'll start with you, Jasper.
I would say 1,300 might be a little too much just because of how many weapons they have and how many mouths they have, how many mouths need to be fed on this offense. Just when you got, you go down the list of the McCaffrey, you got Kittle, you got Deebo, you got Elijah Mitchell, you got, Aiyuk. So, Juwan Jennings even coming in as a strong 3. I would like to see him get some more touches, specifically in the goal line. I just think there's a lot of, and I also don't think, and just combine that with Shanahan's scheme and how much they run the ball and how effective they run the ball. I would say 1,300 would be, that's asking a lot. What did he top out at last? Did he got 1,000? I think he barely.
Yeah, like 2015, I think it was.
Exactly.
2015, 2016.
I would say he's going to be around in that ballpark, but just with more receptions and probably more tugs. That's what I think is going to be his breakout. I think he's going to get in the red zone a lot more. I think he's just going to score more. plus have probably maybe 10 or 12 more grabs. But as far, I think the yard is going to be about the same. But I think it's just going to be the impact that he has. Josh mentioned that dog mentality he has. He just looks like he's playing with that. You can see it in the way he blocks. Like, he takes a lot of pride in the way he blocks, in the way he just mushes dudes or dips dudes. Like, Harper, you and I, we come from the same school.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Dove, that wideout school. Like, that was one of the first things like he installs in you, is just that dog, and just that don't let the first person tackle you. And I could just see that in preseason and in camp, that's how he's moving, and that's just outside of everything else. I think that's what's a few years ago, he's in the Shanahan doghouse, and like, you've just seen the maturity of him grow since that point, and I just think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like he's taking that next step. But I'm like, man, if anybody's ever been at practice over the last couple of years, I feel like he's been doing the same, like just cooking guys. And maybe it was to a different level this year. It felt like there was more emphasis on potentially getting the ball in his hands, but he's just been good to me. Like, I've been waiting for them to just be like, all right, like, we're going to feature him in the offense. And I just think there's just so many weapons that they're like, you know what? We're not going to feature anybody. It's just, we're going to run our concepts, and if you're open, we'll get the ball to you. But we're not just going to be like, all right, we're going to move this guy around. Think of CeeDee Lamb. And I see what CeeDee Lamb does for the Dallas Cowboys. But, man, I mean, he lines up. He's out wide left. He lines up in the slot on the left. Then they motion him over to the right. Okay, let's put him in this situation where he has an advantageous or he has an advantage as it pertains to, like, the coverage. Now he has, like, a linebacker over him or a safety, or he's off in space. I just feel like for the 49ers, they'll pick and choose when they want to do things like that for Aiyuk, but it ain't something that they do, like, consistently to where you'll start to see him get the amount of volume that people are expecting. Now, maybe they do. Maybe it's different this year. But even in preseason, he has done some things where, okay, let me run this top route and they get the ball to me on 3rd and short. Cool. Okay, let me, catch this slant route, or let me run this curl and they throw the ball to me. But I feel like there's even more. I think they can do more in the sense of just using the guy that is really explosive. All right. Now, a guy that could potentially take away from that is probably Deebo Samuel. And Deebo Samuel came out and he was like, you know what? I didn't have a good year last year. Matter of fact, it was terrible. It was a really bad year. And, I would do shows with my guy, Greg Pinelli. We'd be watching the film, and he's like, why is Deebo? He's like, Deebo's got to be getting ripped in film for this. Like, this is not how you let your quarterback out the draw. There was a throw against the Carolina Panthers where Deebo was supposed to be running a dig, and the safety undercut it and picked it off. He either picked it off or he jumped it and it hit him in the chest and he dropped it. But I think he picked it off. And everybody's like, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo. And Greg is like, that is not on Jimmy. Like, that is on Deebo. You cannot run a dig and continue to drift upfield on your dig to where now the safety is able to undercut it. You have to actually kind of either flatten out off or come back down just slightly. So let's say if you're at, right at the line, right, that goes across the field. All right, get to that line, and you can work right back to the other side of that line to where now that safety can't undercut it. But he was doing things like that even outside of maybe not creating the most separation in routes or whatever, it's like just even things that for Kyle's offense to function, like, bro, you're not doing those things on a consistent basis. So it feels like he has really, saying, all right, I'm finna do all these things. I'm finna take my game to the next level. I'm gonna ball out. I'm gonna do these things and get back to what I was in 2021, where he was a 1,400-yard receiver, had another few hundred yards rushing. He was, a first-team All-Pro. So, Deebo Samuel, all right, and Josh, you kind of talked about Aiyuk kind of being that wide receiver one. Where do you think Deebo fits into all of that with his role?
I mean, if you talk about total production, Deebo is still he's a wide receiver one. When I say Aiyuk is a wide receiver one, he fits that physical stature and his route running. He's a number one receiver. With Deebo, you can do so many other things with him. He's still a number one, but he's not your typical receiver. You can line him up in the backfield, which they probably won't do that much this year because they have McCaffrey and they have Mitchell and the two other ones. But I think he's going to have another big year. Like I said, I saw him at the Raiders camp, and he just looked fast. Like, he looked explosive. I'm like, okay, I didn't see that last year. I think he's back. But where his yardage is going to come from is from reverses, quick slants, screens, get it to him now, those deep over routes off the play action boot, and that's where he's going to get all his touches. And I think from what I saw, both of them, they're going to have big years. And Deebo definitely looks back. He looks like he's fast again, just like that 21 season. So I'm excited to see him.
How do you think with Brock Purdy at quarterback, do you think there's a guy that he feels more comfortable throwing the ball to? Do you think one guy might be more of a safety blanket than the other guy? I know there's George Kittle kind of involved in that as well, and Christian McCaffrey, who we're not talking about as a receiver, but obviously he's involved heavily in the passing game. But when you look at Deebo Samuel, what he brings, Brandon Aiyuk, what he brings, not trying to pin those guys against each other, but for Brock Purdy, who do you think is the guy that he should probably look to go to more?
Man, so I would definitely say Aiyuk, because I trust Aiyuk to get open 9 times out of 10. I trust him to get open. I'm not saying I don't trust Deebo, but they may get open a little different, So I would definitely want Brock Purdy to get the ball to Aiyuk, if 3rd and 5, 3rd and 10, look for Aiyuk. But that's not to say, like, if it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, get Deebo on a quick slant, let him get busy, let him go to work. But if we're talking 3rd and 5 and beyond, and it's crazy because we see Jennings as that 3rd down dude, right? Like, he's always catching the ball on 3rd downs, getting that 1st down. It really should be Aiyuk. Like, he has that skill set to be that guy, but I'm not sure how many 3rd down catches he has, but it's quiet, because when I think of 3rd down, I think Jennings. So,
3rd and Juwan, that's what they call it.
3rd and Juwan. So I definitely think Aiyuk needs to be that guy, and I think Purdy trusted him. And I think, if I was Purdy, I would definitely lean on Aiyuk a lot more on them 3rd downs, and his number 1 receiver who he should trust the most.
Well, that's my thing, Jasper, too. I want to get your thoughts on this, but like, why wouldn't Kyle just be like, all right, this is a guy who I really trust to get open no matter where he's lined up? Some of those outs, and this is how, if the fans want to see Aiyuk have that 100-catch season for 1,300 yards, it's going to be on Kyle to be like, all right, it is 3rd down. I do like Juwan Jennings in this role, but heck, I'm going to put my best guy there in the slot. Now you run this out route, on 3rd down. Like, now on 3rd down, I'm moving Aiyuk around to get him in position to, have the advantage. But it feels like it's like, nah, he's our X receiver. He's going to be on the ball, and he's not motioning. I feel like they do a lot with that. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well, Jasper?
Yeah, and what's interesting is when you bring that up, is I noticed in the preseason game as well, they didn't connect on it, but I do think there's going to be more of an emphasis of getting, those big plays out of a BA. Just even, in the red zone, we saw them, they ran the fade. They ran the fade that was not timed well, and it was tough. It was also tough just because of, if you saw the JT O'Sullivan break that again, like, he broke down, like, the corner wasn't really pressing, and he was like off. He was kind of off like 2 or 3 yards. I don't know if you saw it, Crock.
Yeah. So typically, like, all right, when, let's say you're around the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
If you're around the 5-yard line,
I think they were at like 5.
And let's say I'm guarding you, Jasper. All right, I'm guarding you. You're on the 5-yard line. I really want to plant my feet around the 1-yard line. And then I don't want to get back into the end zone, because I know no matter what you run, you're going to break off your route right around there, like right around the goal line. And what receivers like to do a lot.
I'm good by him.
Yeah. What receivers like to do is they'll attack you, and then right before they get to you, they want to make their move and then fade, either go fade or go slant, or come right down the line of scrimmage on the end or out, right? And then a lot of times it's just kind of right down that line. Well, when the corner gives ground, that just makes it even easier for you, because now it's like, hey, man, so you're not going to touch me or nothing. Well, what that corner did was say, yeah, I'm going to be at the 1, and I ain't giving ground. So I'm gonna make contact with you right around the goal line, and then I'm going to fade with you. Or if you run in, I'm going to squeeze you down line and try to break that ball up. So it is more difficult when the corner plays it that well, which he did. But there are certain other things that Aiyuk can do, and JT did a good job of breaking down. I think he ran he went in to kind of run out, but he didn't give the DB nothing at the top, right? He didn't give him a little nod or anything. It was just like, play.
That was on a different play, but either way, I think them just working the fade, because it's preseason, them just working the fade shows you that, okay, they are going to try to make him more of a focal point of trying to get him to be that alpha prototypical wide receiver one, because those are the type of plays you would run for your Julio Joneses, your Andre Johnsons that we saw Kyle's had those kind of, prototype wide receiver one guys. He hasn't really had that with the Niners, which we've seen, which we were critical of early on in his tenure, and then he drafted.
You were critical of.
Critical. you weren't fighting back. You were kind of like, yeah, that's kind of Kyle. Like, at the same time, though, we could use a receiver, a wide receiver one, so you don't have to scheme so much. When you could just go third and short, get the first down, throw it to option A, whoever that is. So I do think Brock and BA are working that chemistry, and that is good to see. But personally, I think who we should be looking for on third down, I honestly think it should be Kittle. Like, it always should be Kittle. That's what they say is, especially a young quarterback, the best friend is a tight end. Yeah. And we did see that when Brock took over. Like, Kittle's numbers went through the roof versus his production with Jimmy and Trey in the beginning of the season. When Brock took over, we started to see Kittle get busy again. So I would like to see.
I think his touchdowns went through the roof. I don't think his receptions.
You're right. His still down for what you would like. For what you're paying Kittle, you would like him to be that Travis Kelce kind of Mahomes. That's who Mahomes looks for every time. Like, it's going to Kelce, and they still can't stop it. I do think Kittle has that in him, where he can be explosive, he can get open. He obviously runs his routes a lot differently than Kelce does. They're two different kind of route runners. But I do think Kittle has it in him to have more of a resurgence year. Nothing like his record-breaking year, but I just think on third downs, if we're talking strictly third downs and who Purdy should be kind of looking for, if it isn't Aiyuk, then it should be Kittle. Like, undoubtedly, it should be Kittle.
So we're talking a lot about the receivers and these pass catchers and things they do well. And I think Kittle, his usage, and I guess we could say this about all the guys. Like, man, the usage isn't quite there, the volume. And it's like, Will Crock, how can you get the volume of usage to all of these guys, right? And again, we keep not forgetting about Christian McCaffrey, but he's there looming as well, where he's going to get his, 4 receptions, 3 receptions. That it just takes away from what the 49ers pass catchers are able to, be production-wise. And that's why I kind of think, if you ask me, I think Brandon Aiyuk, his kind of days are numbered with the 49ers. He'll play this year and probably play on his 5th-year option. But after that, I don't know how they end up re-signing him. They're struggling to sign Nick Bosa right now. So, Aiyuk, if he has a year that people are expecting, he's going to be extremely difficult to bring back as well. But you talked about kind of those big receivers or guys that just kind of have a role. And we touched on Juwan Jennings a little bit, but there's kind of this younger guy who's kind of trying to find his role on this team. And Ray McLeod, he broke his wrist and he's out. I think he's going to miss 3 to 4 weeks of the season. And we all know anytime somebody goes down, there's an opportunity for someone else. And right now, that opportunity seems to be for Ronnie Bell. All right. So, Josh, we were at the Raiders game. You see him catching a go route. Obviously, he had a couple, drops, one in the Raiders game, one in the Chargers game or the Broncos game that ended up getting picked off, but Broncos game. But early on, man, like, what are you seeing from this guy? Because when I was watching him on film at Michigan, I saw a guy that people weren't really threatened by his speed vertically like that. And, I thought he excelled more from the slot where he's out in space. And I thought he won well there. I thought he was a tremendous blocker. And I was like, oh, this is why Kyle Shanahan loves him. Like, he takes pride in blocking. But it felt like it was all starting to kind of come together in the 49ers offense, where he was able to, have some nice little, catch and run opportunities, and he's making plays, and then he's back there at punt return and kickoff return. So what are your early thoughts on Ronnie Bell, Josh?
So Ronnie Bell, he reminds me more of like a Deebo. I'm not too threatened by his route running, if that makes sense. Like, he struggled with the drops, but if he catches it, he's gonna get busy. Like, he runs strong. He breaks tackles. He's a Kyle Shanahan type of receiver, But if we're talking like 3rd and 5, go get open, I would rather see Ray McLeod go get open than Ronnie Bell. Like, he's like, I don't know. don't get me wrong, he had a really good preseason.
You're not sold on him. That's what you're saying. You're trying to find the word. He's trying to say it nicely. He's trying to say it nicely.
Yeah. I'm not that sold on Ronnie Bell. Like, I mean, I went back and looked at the film. Like, his route running, I mean, he's not really, running a precise route. He's catching the ball. He's catching the ball over the middle, which is big in the NFL, right? He's not afraid to go over the middle, catch the ball, cut up, break a few tackles, stiff arming people. But I think he's better with the ball in his hands rather than you telling him to go out, run a post curl and get open, win. I don't think that he's that player. I'd rather you give him a quick screen or give him a slant and get him the opportunity to catch and run. So I'm not gonna say I'm not sold on him, but I
knew you were gonna bring this one out, Crock. I saw you tweet this about.
So you saw me tweet it. So
which one is this one?
This is I want to say this is the curl he ran, and he kind of just doesn't sell the go. He kind of just comes off very lackadaisical. Like, you would like to see him explode off the ball, threaten the DB with like, I'm running go, then snap it off. Like, this is more or less like if you were playing corner, Crock, you wouldn't have believed nothing he's doing right.
Right. So
this is the route I think it is.
And things like that, those get picked. Like, if you're depending on who you're going to get those.
Yep.
That's a pick. That's a pick. That's back to the house.
Yeah. He didn't sell him. He's not low enough. Like, if Dub was coaching him right now, first of all, he's not low enough in the stands. He came off the ball way too high. Yeah, he's high. He's not really threatening. Really, he's not even threatening that he's really going deep. Like, if anything, he's been ready to settle down.
Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to.
I did show this, and I talked about where I like him more, and even in college, guys that are in the slot, one is like, okay, a little bit tougher for guys to get hands on them. You have more space for two-way goes. I think just naturally for a cornerback, you feel that. Like, okay, I'm out. There's a lot more space, especially for this guy that might be, he could be kind of quick a little bit, or maybe he could work the top of his routes. So, this to me seems to be more of an advantageous situation for him, where it's just like, boom, let me attack that leverage. And then, is it playing? There we go. Attack that leverage, and then boom, break that off. Ball's on him, and then okay, now this is what Josh was talking about, how he can get busy after the play. So
I would actually go on a limb if you went back to the first one. I would go on a limb and say he might have even been confused to what he has on this. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of deep, and I've been in this situation where, damn, I don't know what to run. I don't know what I'm running, and then he kind of just sits down because it doesn't even look like he might not have known what he had on that route. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, that's kind of what it looked like, because this one looked how he just snaps it off. He's so much more confident and precise, and like he's sudden about, I know what I'm running here. I know I'm gonna snap this off, break in, and let's go. The ball's already on me. Like, he looked very sure of himself in that second route versus the curl he had.
Well, I think a lot of that is why guys end up in, we say Kyle doghouse, but, the expectations for his receivers are really high, and there's a lot going on. Man, y'all have been in these offenses and kind of what goes into it from going from college, especially to the professional level. Like, there's so much, especially all the sight adjustments and things like that. So there is a chance that while it looks like he might be a little confused by exactly what he's supposed to run, it might be he's supposed to be reading his corner, and it's like, okay, I'm supposed to have a goal, but he's kind of bailing out. So let me just kind of let me sit this route down, and then it's like, but you never threaten him vertically, so to get him to open up. So that's something that could very well happen with him. And I think
it reminds me a little bit of Steve Smith, not the Steve Smith, Carolina Steve Smith. He kind of reminded me of USC Steve Smith.
Oh, yeah. Like,
not very flashy, not very, just like very unassuming. When I turned on his film when he drafted him, because as soon as we drafted a receiver, of course, what I'm doing is but like, that was the first thing I did is I saw he was small again, so I rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm watching his highlights, and I'm like, okay, he gets open a lot. He makes tough catches, like Michigan guy, very blue collar, like nothing flash. I was honestly looking at the receivers that they brought into camp, and I'm like, it's going to be tough for him. Like, I honestly thought, the undrafted dude from East Carolina, White State?
Yeah, Isaiah Winstead.
I was really high on him just because of the big body, make the flashy catches. His story was dope, just how he posted his practice clips on Twitter. Like, I remember going through stuff like that, posting, my practice clips from arena, and just trying to, back before videos like that were going viral. So I kind of just empathized with him immediately when I saw that story. So I was like, I want bro to to make it. And I put on his clips. I'm like, oh, he's nice. He could bring some of the Niners that they don't really have. And then I also like Conley. So I was just like, I don't know how bro's going to make it. And then I think when the game came on, it was like, okay, nah, he's got something to him that's just like a big third down catch. He'll just make that tough catch up the seam. Like he just seems like that kind of receiver, which is why it was no surprise when he made the team. When I saw him in that Broncos game, I was like, nah, he's making the team. He's good. He's got the dog in him. He just really breaking tackles, like, and it looks like it's nothing to him. Like he looks like a vet out there. Like he really kind of looks like a vet outside of some of his, shaky route running, which could be the playbook and not understanding coverages and having to change a route mid-right. So I'll give him a pass on that because I'm sure they like what they're seeing in practice for what was he, a 6th rounder? Crock?
7th.
He was a 7th round to make the team. Yeah, so they saw something.
He was 7th. Yeah, 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good stuff there. He did some good stuff. Before we get out of here, man, I definitely want to get your thoughts on this game. So, I mean, week 1's here. I'm actually going to be in Pittsburgh for the game. I'll be flying out there soon. And you said what?
Are you coming out here week 2? LA?
Nah, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I think my daughter. I'm already going to be missing the game this weekend, so I can't miss the game next week. My daughters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to this game, and I'm just like, I don't know exactly what to expect. You got a new defensive coordinator, and I feel like really Kyle Shanahan's kind of like he's really kind of your defensive coordinator for real. They run what he wants them to run. But you got a new DC. I'm curious to see just how he calls the game. You have, potentially Nick Bosa out, and we know how that could be for the 49ers defense. Again, I don't know if I trust the 49ers defense the same without Nick Bosa. They're just going to have to show me. We'll see. But you're going up against a Pittsburgh Steelers team who they're clicking now. I had my guy Jarrett Bailey on the other day, and he was talking about how down the stretch, Kenny Pickett started playing really good ball. And then training camp, I know everything I heard out of Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett, he's arrived, he's taking that next step. He's been really good, et cetera. Then you see him in the preseason, and he only had 5 preseason drives. Every drive ended in a touchdown. He had a perfect passer rating throughout all of preseason, right? So, you just see him man, it's starting to come together. He got these weapons. He's trusting Pickens. They added Allen Robinson. They got Deontay Johnson. I really like Deontay Johnson and what he brings. So you see all these guys, and I think that there's a chance that if Nick Bosa isn't out there, he can possibly be a little weird for the 49ers. So I don't want to push my agenda on y'all or anything that I'm thinking as far as this game goes and how the 49ers, there's a scenario where they're kind of in a little trouble. Now, again, Niners can go out there. Defense could be what they were last year. Number 1 defense. They're forcing turnovers. They rattle Kenny Pickett, and the 49ers just crush them. That can happen as well. But I'm leaning more on the side of cautious because I just think it's a weird scenario that the 49ers are in, especially with Bosa out of there. So, Jasper, get your thoughts, man, on just what are you thinking about this game week 1?
Even before the Bosa talk, when you saw this on the schedule, you're like, all right, well, hopefully we get Brock back. Now, Brock took care of that. He was already there week 1 for, ready day 1 of training camp. So you knew you'd have Brock. So that, I guess, in that sense, I felt a little better. But then it's also, man, this is a hostile environment. So Mike Tomlin, even though they struggled last year, still has had a winning record. And he's going to have those dudes ready to play regardless of who's out there. And the, offensive weapons that they've added, you mentioned, they already had a really good defense. So I was already coming in this game thinking this is going to be a tough one. I was just telling my pops the other day, this is going to be a very close game. I see it as a close game if the Niners do win. It's going to come down to stops. It's going to come down to the turnover battle. It's going to come down to who can win in the trenches, as it always usually does. But yeah, I'm definitely not just chalk. A lot of people in the preseason were just like, oh man, they're going to blow Pittsburgh. What? Nah, they're not going to. Pittsburgh's going to be ready to play. Niners have a lot of questions they have to answer. Crock, you outlined them great. The new defensive coordinator. How is that going to mesh? Whether Bosa's in or out, we're going to have most likely a rusty Bosa. At best, we're going to have a rusty Nick Bosa. What's it going to be like on the back end? On the other side of Ward now, we have Lenore edged in as a starter. What does that look like? Jimmy Ward is gone. You know, that's a thing. I think that's something that isn't talked about enough. I think in this offseason, just with the Trey Lance and the Bosa and the Purdy, all Sam Darnold, all that talk. You know, a lot of, you know, Jimmy Ward was the longest 9 or 10 year, you know, that was on the squad, and I think his leadership and just his role that he played is going to be missed in that, especially in that the secondary. So there's a lot of things at question, but I do think, again, at the end of the day, the Niners do figure it out. They do, you know, prevail, and they do get the win this weekend and get off the, you know, the week one blues, man. I feel like they've been on the week one blues for more than not under the Kyle Shanahan tenure. So you know, enough of the slow starts. I do think they finally get off to a good start. You know, they have 2 road games to start the season. You'd like to get both and come back home, you know, 2-0, but 1 game at a time. But I think they get it done, Crock. But I mean, I'm definitely worried about Pittsburgh for sure. It's week 1. Everybody's undefeated week 1. So everybody's optimistic. Everybody thinks they're going to the Super Bowl. Like, until you tell them they're not. So, you know, the Niners got to go in and handle business.
A lot of times those week 1 blues come from, I feel like the offense kind of getting a slow start, but they're always in those times, you know, outside of like that Detroit Lions game.
Right.
But they've always been able to rely on the defense to where it's like, all right, even though the offense is starting a little slow, like defense, they're going to keep us in the game and potentially win this game. But if Nick Bosa is not out there again, that kind of muddies that look a little bit. Josh, what are your thoughts, man, on this game? How you feeling?
It's going to be a dogfight, honestly. I like the talent that the Steelers have. They have talent at all levels. They have Minka. They got T.J. Watt, arguably the best pass rusher. You can say that. That's just on defense. The offense, they have playmakers all over the field on offense. I love the Steelers receivers. They got everything, every type of receiver you need. You need a jump ball. You know, you got Pickens. You need a receiver that can go get a first down, run a crisp route. They got Deontay Johnson. You need somebody to take it off the top. They got Calvin Austin, and then you got the vet in there and Robinson. I'm not sure how he's going to be or if he declined, but I think he used to be a really good receiver. So you got those dudes. And you pair that with Bosa not being there. So I don't care how good we think the Niners defense is. When you're missing the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, he's that for a reason. It's you know, you're going to go a notch down as a whole unit. So I had Kenny Pickett as a fantasy quarterback last year. So I seen him. I watched him every game, right? You know, he looked like he could be a good quarterback, but he made those rookie mistakes. Now that he's not a rookie, you know, I'm curious to see what he's going to do. But that's why I really think we need Bosa to put some pressure on Pickett. You know, get in his face. Don't give him too much time back there. So I think it's going to be a dogfight. I think that it's going to be a high scoring game. You know, both defenses is good, but I think the offenses are going to put up some points on both defenses. So I think the Niners still pull it off.
Not to mention Najee. I mean, Najee Harris. You know,
Najee Harris, big Najee, and then Warren. Yeah, I was going to say Warren. No, he hits the hole, and I think I'm not even going to say it. Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
Well, you think he's better than Najee?
Hey, he runs better. He's
a little more dynamic, huh?
Yeah, he's a little more
we
dynamic.
talk about them. There's also McFarland too. Anthony McFarland. He typically does a really good job back there as well. So they got 3 backs that they can definitely get the rock to. And the 49ers, again, in preseason, run game look a little lacking. So hopefully 49ers kind of, you know, beef up there. And I think a big part of it is getting Nick Bosa back. All right, but shoes, man, that's gonna do it for this episode. I appreciate both of y'all coming through, man. We got Jasper, all right, we got Josh, and we're gonna do this next Wednesday as well, man. Appreciate y'all for coming on.